Welcome to Simpler Bible, a daily journey to biblical understanding. Welcome back. Today, for episode 31, we are in one of my favorite stories of the Bible, and that is the crossing of the Red Sea in Exodus 14. Pick up with me, if you would, please, in Exodus 14:1. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-Zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they are wandering in the land, the wilderness has shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all of his host, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord." And they did so. So there's that again, I am the Lord. You're starting to catch that now in Exodus. Most popular books that it exists, and I've already told you, Ezekiel is the number one place we see that phrase, then followed by Leviticus, and then followed by Exodus. You won't find it quite as much in some of the other places, but oh my goodness, when you're in Leviticus or Ezekiel, that is there all the time. When the king of Egypt was told that the people, verse 5 here, when the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed towards the people, and they said, "What is this that we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us?" So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him, and he took 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt with the officers over them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. So this is probably after 7 days, right? Because the feast of the Passover is supposed to last 7 days. So this is probably about a week later. Verse 9, the Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, and his horsemen and his army overtook them and camped at the sea by Pi-Hahiroth in front of Baal-Zephon. When Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly, and the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone so that we can serve the Egyptians, for it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." I want you to catch this. They are a week, roughly, out of Egypt, and already they're like, "Didn't we just tell you to leave us alone? Didn't we just tell you to leave us in Egypt?" I think that I missed this somehow growing up in church. I missed how often the Israelites complained. They complain a lot. And so we go back in our mind to chapter 4, where Moses first shows up after 40 years of being gone, and he tells the Israelites, "God has sent me to rescue you and to deliver you." The people rejoice that God has seen them in their suffering, rejoice that they've been remembered, and they worship God. By chapter 6, or by chapter 5 of Exodus, they're telling Moses, "Just leave us alone, man. Like, it was better for us when you weren't here." And by chapter 6, they're so distraught by the oppression of Pharaoh against them that they're not even hearing the encouraging words anymore of Moses about what God is going to do. Now here they are, a week out. I want you to think about this. You have just witnessed for the last couple of weeks these 10 plagues befall the Egyptians. You have just watched God exodus you, remove you from Egypt with force and beauty and power and this grace that's been bestowed upon you. You have all of your livestock because they didn't die in the plagues. You have all the belongings of the Egyptians, and you've come out of Egypt as an entire nation of people. They went into Egypt, 75 people. They've come out of Egypt, 603,000 men, not counting women and children. And here they are. Egypt shows up, and they're like, "Look, Moses, isn't this what we told you would happen? We told you, just leave us alone. Just let us be in Egypt." So I want you to see that while they're in Egypt, while these plagues are happening, they're going, "Moses, just leave us alone. Just let us be." They would rather die in Egypt as slaves than die in the wilderness as free people, right? They'll say this a couple of times. We'll see this again in a couple of chapters. Verse 13 says, Moses said to the people, "Fear not, stand firm, see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You have only to be silent." The Lord will fight for you. You have only to be silent. This is a favorite verse of a lot of people. I see it get used a lot. And people kind of claim it as their own. And they're like, "Yeah, God's going to fight for me. I need to only be silent." Yeah, I mean, maybe. But for sure, this is a verse about the Israelites, okay? I just want to encourage you to be really careful that you don't try to make every verse in the Bible about you, right? We can't do that. We can't read ourselves into every single story. Is there spiritual implication? Yes. But just be cautious. It's just a word of caution that we won't make every verse be about us. The Lord will fight only, the Lord will fight for you, have only be silent. Like, yeah, I mean, okay, maybe there's some New Testament parallels, but just be cautious. Then the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. So Moses is going before God, and he's like, God, he's like, the people are crying out to you. I'm crying out to you. And he's like, what do we do? And God goes, Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to go forward. Now, forward is the Red Sea. Forward is the Red Sea. Behind them is the army of the Egyptians. And God's like, Moses, why are you calling out to me? Why are you talking to me about this? Just go forward. If you like little quirky things, and you know that I do, there are 3 places in the Bible where people go to talk to God or pray to God, and God's like, why are you here? Why are we having this conversation? This is one of those. So God has directed Moses to lead the people. He has directed the people to this place. This is how the chapter started. He brought the people right to this place. God didn't bring them here by accident. In fact, if you read the beginning of the chapter again, you'll see that God brought him here. He's bouncing the Israelites around in the wilderness a little bit and bringing them to the Red Sea so that what would happen? So that Pharaoh would go, man, they don't know where they're going. Let's go get them right now, right? So Pharaoh has his spies watching them or whatever, and he's like, they don't even know where they're going to go. Let's go get them. They're hemmed in by the sea. This will be easy pickings. And God goes, this is how I've orchestrated it so that I can get glory over Pharaoh, so that my name can be known, so that the rest of the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And so God orchestrated it this way. God clearly led Moses to this place, and Moses is going, hey, God, the people are complaining. And God goes, why are you talking to me? Move forward. The other 2 places that occurs is in Joshua chapter 7. Joshua is leading the people through the conquest of the promised land. And long story short, they've just lost a battle that they shouldn't have lost. But they lost a battle because of a man named Achan who had sinned against God. And so Joshua is crying out to the Lord, and he's like, God, why did we lose? What's going on? And in Joshua 7:10, God goes, Joshua, why are you on your face? Get up off your face. He goes, the reason you lost is there's sin in your camp. The third place that happens is Elijah in 1 Kings 19. And Jezebel is pursuing Elijah. Elijah has killed all the false prophets of Baal, has killed all these false priests of idols. And Jezebel is hunting Elijah now to put him to death. And Elijah flees, meets with God, and he says, God, he goes, I'm the only one left of your prophets. I'm the only one left serving you. And now they're trying to kill me. Now they're seeking to bring my life to an end. And God goes, why are you here? He goes, get up and go and do these things. Anoint Hazael, king of Assyria. And then he says, go and anoint Jehu, king of Israel. And he says, and go and anoint Elisha as your successor. He goes, get back to work. So there are these 3 places in the Bible where these people are crying out to God in a place where God had given them clear instruction. And he's like, what are you doing? Do what I've told you to do. Finish what I've told you to do. And so I always find that a little bit quirky, a little bit interesting. Anyway, back to verse 15. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, so that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry land. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go forth and after them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all of his host, his chariots, his horsemen, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten glory over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the angel of God, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. The angel of the Lord, we talked about that before, the angel of the Lord who was going before them. We'll get back to that later. Verse 20, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel, and there was a cloud and there was darkness, and it lit up the night without one coming near the other all night. Don't overlook the last phrase of verse 20. So the pillar of cloud, pillar of fire that had been leading the people of Israel had led them right to the Red Sea. When the Egyptian army comes up, this pillar of cloud now goes in behind them and forms a wall between the Israelites and the Egyptian army. And by night, what do we know that the pillar of cloud turns into? It turns into a pillar of fire. And so now there's a wall of fire between the Israelite army and the Egyptian army. And what does it say? It lit up the night without one coming near the other all night long. Another rendering will say, so that one would not come near the other all night long. Now we know why the Egyptians want to come near the Israelites. They want to recapture their servants. But why would the Israelites want to go over to the Egyptians? Not for warfare, but for surrender. What if they already said, why'd you bring us out? Now we're going to die in the wilderness. It would be better for us to go back to Egypt. This is going to be a complaint that they make quite a bit. And so God is this wall of fire between the Egyptians and the Israelites isn't just to keep the Egyptians from attacking the Israelites. It's also to keep the Israelites from chickening out. It's also to keep them from surrendering themselves to the Egyptians. Verse 21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove back the sea by a strong east wind all night and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. The people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground. That's important. So, where was it? Yeah. The people went in by dry ground, and the waters being a wall to their left and their right hand. The Egyptians pursued them and went in after them in the midst of the sea, all of Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And in the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and the cloud looked down on the Egyptian forces and threw them into a panic. This is the kind of thing that God does a couple of different times. There are a few places where he throws an army into a panic, where he causes an army to flee in fear, where he causes an enemy to the people of God to just kind of lose it. And so that God can get victory over them. He throws an enemy army into deep sleep. He destroys an entire enemy army with the power of a single angel. He causes the enemy armies to fight each other. So he's going to throw the Egyptians into a panic here. And look at what it says is happening in verse 25. Clogging their chariot wheels as they drove, and the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians." And then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen." And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal course when the morning appeared. So remember, the wind drove it by all night. They're going through the Red Sea all night long, and by morning this is taking place. And as the Egyptians fled into it, the Lord threw the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen of all the host of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea. Not one remained. But the people of Israel walked over on dry ground through the sea, and the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptian, so the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. I wish that this was as optimistic as it sounds here at the end, right? They believed in the Lord and his servant Moses. They did the same thing in chapter 4. Moses came, threw down his staff, it turned into a serpent, put his hand into his coat, it turned leprous, put his hand into his coat, it was whole again, poured water on the ground to show them blood, and they're like, whoa, God sees us, he knows us, he's going to deliver us. They believed in Moses, and they believed in the Lord at that point too. And then what were they doing a few days later? Moses, leave us alone. I wish that this was going to be significant enough for the people of God to trust him, but they won't. Remember, we're about a week into the Exodus here. Wait until you see what happens for them next week, but for us, tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for journeying with us today at Simpler Bible. Together, you and I have looked at another passage of Scripture and come to know the Bible a little bit better and enjoy God more fully. This video, along with all of our videos, can be found at simplerbible.com, where you can enjoy our Through the Bible in a Year course. You can also enjoy a wealth of resources, blog posts that take you a little bit deeper into the text, a Bible study format that you can use with your small groups or your family, and we're creating new content all the time, all with the commitment to help us be people who know and enjoy God more fully. Thank you so much for being part of it, and we can't wait to see you next time.